When people lead with their creativity, they generate purpose and meaning in their work, and they consistently drive business value. I'm Dr. Natalie Nixon, and I change lives with ideas. I'm a creativity strategist, the president of Figure 8 Thinking, a global keynote speaker, and the author of the award-winning book, The Creativity Leap. I advise leaders on transformation by applying wonder and rigor to amplify their business value. And I do that in two ways, through the lenses of creativity and foresight. Some of the questions that my clients have would be, what's the business that we should be in versus the business that we've been churning in? And how do we figure out our meaning and our purpose? There are two types of experiences I offer: keynote speaking and advisory services. I'm a global keynote speaker, and I'm often hired by CHROs, chief strategy officers, and chief innovation officers, as well as event planners to deliver a keynote at your next event. I also offer strategic advisory sessions, both one-on-one as well as Foresight Studios for your teams. Nothing makes me happier than when my clients get those aha moments where they self-identify as creative and they understand that creativity is actually the essential engine for innovation. That's the power of applying creativity, toggling between wonder and rigor to solve problems. I help you shift your paradigm to amplify your business value. Hey there, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the WonderRigor podcast on LinkedIn. I'm so happy to be here today. My name is Natalie Nixon. I'm a creativity strategist and the CEO of Figure 8 Thinking. And today I'm thrilled to be joined by Laura Penn, Dr. Laura Penn, who's based in, just outside of Geneva, Switzerland. Hi, Laura.
Hi, Natalie. Nice to see you here.
Good to see you. Welcome, welcome. I'm so happy that you're here to join today. And Laura, I'm going to let Laura introduce herself, but from the way I would position Laura is that she's a real expert in embodied leadership. And she has spent a big part of her career in training and coaching executives on their presence, their speaking presence. But Laura, why don't you explain for those of us who've joined today, what it is that you do?
Yes. First, let me say thank you for the invitation to be here to discuss wonder and rigor and everything in between. Just a quick look into what I do, Natalie. I am a business communication and leadership speaking expert. What does that mean? It means that my specialty is to work with leaders and teams from the world's most well-known companies, business schools, and organizations. And I support them to become communicators who speak with impact, authenticity, and human connection. I like to say that I empower them to become competent communicators of the digital age. And I've created a bespoke model, we can call it, method, called the Leadership Speaking Toolbox, that I've designed over my lifetime that involves doing these things with these extraordinary people.
You know, it's funny to hear that you've built a career in helping these leaders and building human connection. And it's interesting because we're humans, right? And yet we still consistently find it challenging to communicate our humanity and to connect in that way. Why do you think that is? Why do you think that we get, especially your clients, they get to a point where they've achieved so much, and yet that's a stumbling block to really connect on a human level?
Yeah, it is surprising. And I love your, naked truth about that. Hey, we're all human. What's going on here? There's something about when people speak in front of audiences where they check out of their humanity. This is me generalizing. It's not everybody, but a lot of people check out of their humanity and they go into this mode of public speaking where everything in their body contracts. They stop breathing. They show up wooden and they are rote. And they create this block that you can't access sitting there in the audience. You don't feel their humanity. You just feel their words. Their words have nothing, though, nothing that sticks, nothing that you remember. And this wooden behavior, which is wooden presence, wooden voice, wooden bodies, this wooden behavior makes the messages that are spoken leak through the cracks under the door and through the cracks in the windows. Nothing stays in the room. And this is a problem, you can imagine.
It is. And we know it when we feel it, right? We've all been in situations as audience members where the words sound spectacular, but maybe for whatever reason, we're not connecting on a meaningful level. So you lead and I don't want to get this name wrong, you lead the Leadership Speaking School. Share with us what that is and what you do at the Leadership Speaking School. Why did you create it?
I created it sort of as my second career, because my first career, I'm a conservation biologist. I care about wildlife and wild places and their conservation. And my training, in my academic training, was in science. And I moved to Switzerland in 2009 with every ambition to continue my work, because I'd taken 3 years off to raise my small children after I finished my doctorate. But I didn't find any work. It was a horrible desert land of no opportunities for me. And I found myself sitting in on a conference of my colleagues, conservation professionals, delivering presentations. You know, they'd come back from their field missions and they were telling everybody what was going on. And I sat there. And that was my aha, Natalie, because every single person who was presenting that day failed at communicating their vital conservation message. And you and I both know that conservation science is a crisis discipline. These messages are urgent. And people can't afford, the wildlife and the wild places that depend on these speeches can't afford to have somebody bungling them up who's representing them. So that's where I had the aha, and I thought, wait a minute, what can I do about this? What can I do about this? This isn't okay, right? And that was the aha.
Yeah, I love that you seized the opportunity at that moment. And I think that's a really important story, because so many people who may be looking to pivot or, figuring out how do I add, my words, not theirs, add in a bit more wonder into their work. You have to be living out in the world, right? You have to be experiencing people's problems and challenges. And that's where often that intersection happens, where your life's work, what you're really good at, what you love to do, intersects with the problems that people are having. And at the end of the day, that's where all great businesses thrive. We get really good at falling in love with people's problems, right?
Right. And that toggling between wonder and rigor, as you like to say, that sweet spot in there and that aha moment was, here's the wonder. What can I do about this? And that was then infusing the tools. My background as conservation scientist, my background as a teacher, my background as a performing artist equals what I first called my company, which was Communicating Environment, which is how to promote conservation through effective public speaking. And that has now, 13 years later, evolved into the Leadership Speaking School, where it's like out of the bag and burst into the world. Before it was mostly for conservation professionals. Now it's for everybody who's a team or a leader needing these essential skills.
Well, we absolutely need it. And you referenced that you've developed a toolkit, a toolbox. Would you share more, maybe a couple of concrete examples of what those tools are and what's the context? How do you make them work?
Yeah, sure. So in kind of reshaping my career number 2, I had to become an expert and I had to do it fast. So I wrote 2 books. My first book was How to Enhance the Performance of Public Speaking. The second book was the Leadership Speaking / Public Speaking Toolbox. I needed to understand these tools from kind of an academic point of view in order to become good at them myself. And I was using them regularly in my day-to-day. So there are 4 pillars in the toolbox. And it comes down to the performing arts. It's the pillar of presence. What is your presence? What is the energy that you bring into the room? Because you're responsible for that as a communicator. What is your voice? And how are you using it to connect with your audiences so that they can feel your message, remember your message, and care about your message? And the third pillar is, what is your body doing? Where are your feet? Where are you standing? What is your awareness of your body in space and time? And how are you using it to be congruent with what your message is saying? And then the fourth pillar is audience connection. what tools and techniques can I use to make it about the audience, to connect with them on a human level? These are the 4 pillars of the toolbox. And inside each one is a really delicious combination of all sorts of tools and techniques that I've been building for my lifetime.
So I'm just gonna try to recap this. The 4 pillars of this toolbox are voice, presence,
voice, body, and audience connection.
Presence, voice, body, and audience connection. Interesting.
Yes.
I'm the outgoing chair of the board of a really cool organization called Leadership and Design. And we had a retreat a few weeks ago. And I led an opening session, which happily caught everyone off guard. And the opening session, because we do a lot of design thinking work, and we work standing, but we also have a lot of conversations seated. And what I chose to do was to teach everyone the basic steps of a Latin dance called the bachata. And the bachata is nice because it's kind of right in between merengue, which is kind of like a real cool marching step, moving your hips, to salsa, which can get quite intricate and a bit complex. So what I started out talking about, though, before we got on our feet and started to move, was this about the vagus nerve, right? And interoception and proprioception, and how significant in this digital age, you referenced the digital age in your work, how even more important being in our bodies and how we feel internally, our understanding where we are in spaces. So the best way to demonstrate that is we danced a bit, and people kept referencing it for the rest of the retreat. It was really, it was fun, and it helped you to really connect with your body.
Absolutely.
Do you dance in some ways with your clients?
In every way with my clients. Now,
Okay,
I don't think it's a secret. We went to the same college and we're in the same dance company. Dancing, growing up in the 1970s, everybody was dancing. Dance is my world. And I know what it means to you too. Absolutely. I have to use dance because dance is the universal language of humanity, right? And whistling, I guess you could add, because everybody can whistle. And I've read this wonderful book by Gabrielle Roth. I'm spacing the name out now. It'll come to me later. Anyway, she said, because some people are like, I don't know how to dance. I'm not a dancer. Gabrielle Roth says, if you have a body, you are a dancer.
I love that.
Right? And this whole idea of using dance is extremely powerful because it opens the body. And I say what the body is doing, your presence is doing. What the body is doing, your voice is doing. And what your body is doing, your mind is doing. So when you're connecting on that level to what the power of the body and that everybody can move, with music or without, this is really powerful in teaching and as a technique to teach. Absolutely.
And do you find people they're still a little reticent, a little nervous about dancing when you integrate that into your work?
Absolutely. And I don't start everything by saying, okay, now we're going to dance. I have to design all of my lesson plans with this slow growth into the music, and then see who the toe tappers and the finger snappers are. And then those people lead and then loosen and then a little bit here and then walking. It's just walking in the room is a dance,
Yes, it is. Well,
right?
Sorry.
Go ahead. Just one last thing. I'm careful to call it dance because people are triggered. I'm careful to say, we're going to dance now. So I have this secret language of let's move our bodies.
Yes.
But go ahead. What were you going to say?
No, I was just, and sorry, my camera's a little fuzzy. Let me just try to correct it. Hang on. That's maybe a little better. Yeah, it's a little better. I remind people that walking is controlled falling. And therefore dancing is just intentional falling. It's just intentional walking, right? It's a way of falling mapped to rhythm and other people, and it's a way for us to connect and communicate. So I really love that. I also want to say welcome to Dr. Gustavo Alfonso Rincon. Thank you so much for joining us today in this conversation. If you have any questions or comment, please add that to the chat. When you were talking, Laura, about getting people comfortable in their bodies, this is what I also wanted just to add, is to build on that advice of feeling that connection to your body, the mind, heart, body, through movement, not dance, movement, is I learned as I've been researching and learning a lot more about the vagus nerve, which is the conduit for interoception. Interoception is just our internal sense making, right? I realized that the great philosopher who said, "I think, therefore I am," was wrong. It's not that we think we are. It's first I sense, then I feel, then I think, and then I act. So we have to remember that we are these sentient beings. You mentioned, Laura, that part of your work in the leadership speaking school and your toolbox is to get people connected to their bodies. What's the role of sense making and intuition and getting people comfortable with dealing with those non-metric, non-measurable parts of our existence? What do you find resistance there? How do you get people to really engage with that so that they can be comfortable up on stage?
Absolutely. The pandemic has brought us many things. And one of them has been a preponderance of people who have disassociated their heads from their bodies. Because we are literally talking heads online. Most people are. It's, here I am, this kind of effect. And in this modus operandi of communication, which has been so prevalent in these past 3 years, there is a problem with, now that people are coming live, they're still in this, like, my head is separate from my body. I'm not feeling my feet. I don't know where my hips are. Where is my left foot right now? This is creating tension. And tension is the enemy of many things. But primarily, tension is the enemy of connection. And then the second tier of that is tension is the enemy of your voice. So I have to go in to the body in order to work on the tension, as it were. And it has to be an inside out experience. I find that some colleagues in my field who teach public speaking, they call it, I call it leadership speaking, which for me is an elevated form of public speaking, where the main intention is to consciously and authentically connect with your audiences. In teaching leadership speaking or public speaking for my colleagues, they're teaching it often from the outside in. So it's sort of like Band-Aid solutions. You're speaking too fast. Here's a tip or technique. I'm moving my hands too much. Here's a tip or technique. We have to go inside to discover what it feels like to be speaking so quickly and to connect that feeling to the control of it. We have to go inside to connect to the feeling of moving my hands a lot. Maybe I should stop. Right? It's not the Band-Aid that's going to save you in the end. Band-Aids fall off. It's the internal awareness and the perception that's going to be your asset, your companion. And that's why I teach it from the inside out instead of the outside in. It has to go this way for it to stick and for, frankly, to work.
Totally. Yeah, that self-awareness is everything. And it sounds like what you're also helping people to do, connect to that self-awareness, is a bit of self-talk. I know for me, every time I'm backstage before I speak, I'm always nervous. And what I've started the way I help myself through that is I name it. I just say, wow, my armpits are so sweaty right now. I feel a little bit nervous and sweating more than normal. And then I remember, I go from like, what am I sensing to, for me, this is just what helps me. I go into a rational cognitive explanation. Oh, this means that my mind is connected to my body, right? My mind and my heart and body are super attuned right now. And my body is telling me, helping my mind to know that something's about to happen. And there's two, we always have choices. We could freak out, or we can say, okay, this is going to happen. This is really exciting. And, right. So that self-talk, I find it's part of that self-awareness is really important. Could you share a story about a client who had a really breakout shift after working with you? Like they started at just not self-aware, totally awkward, not like just stiff, just the words
Yes.
were on paper were great, but and then what was the shift? What's an example of a shift that you helped lead a client through?
Oh, this one's a juicy one. I run this program called Leadership Speaking Core, which is a 3-day intensive. 12 hours a day, we're working, right? Very small cohort, no more than 6 people, really intensive, just for leaders. And I had a leader that I had accepted into the program because it's through an application. And he was the wooden version. He was holding his breath. He was nervous. He was not himself. And this is why he signed up for the program, because he could feel it and it was holding him back. He wasn't able to grow in his role as a leader. He couldn't communicate with his team and he couldn't represent the company well. So he came to me. And these 3 days, Natalie, were literally like, in those old-fashioned cartoons where there's like a factory, a thing comes into the machine and it's like, it's like changing and steam is coming out and the form, all of this is happening. So I am, laser coaching every day. We're working on the body. We're moving. We're exploring. We're using music, any tool that I could use for him to make him body aware. And then day 2.5, breakthrough, the lid blew off. It was a moment in the morning where I could just feel it. It was like the old skin was shed. And he stepped out from that old skin. We had a speaking exercise just after his breakthrough. And I could see him. I could see him in there now. He had broken out. I saw his humanity. He was sharing his humanity. And it was so powerful, Natalie, that after his training, he went and got his whole team trained in the same method. So now the whole company is working the same way. But that's one of my best examples.
Well, I think also in that example, what's implicit is that there's a payoff to the business when people pay attention to this inside out work, right? It's going to pay off in terms of the way he can manage this team and motivate the team. If he manages them well, then their productivity spikes. And the productivity spikes, there's a business impact to the company. So this really matters from a business perspective.
Yeah. I mean, leadership speaking has a business ROI. Boom.
I'm going to shift to, thank you for sharing all the great nuggets of excellence from the Leadership Speaking School. I would like to turn a bit inward now to you. Mm-hmm. And my question is, what's the most important lesson in leadership that you have ever learned?
Ooh, and I get to ask you a question too later, right?
Please, yes.
Because I think that's my question for you too.
Okay.
I was 12 years old. My father was getting remarried to my stepmother. I was standing in the kitchen of my new step-grandmother. We were taking out ketchup from the refrigerator. The ketchup in those, glass bottles at the time, because it's early 80s, the ketchup had all that yuckiness around the ring. So she took a rag and she cleaned it off. And then the ketchup bottle was brilliant. It looked brand new. That was a moment of aha and profound breakthrough for me. Why? Because I realized that if something's not working, you can change it.
Yes.
You don't have to accept the dirty ketchup bottle.
You don't.
It can be cleaned. It can be refreshed. It can be renewed. You can make it what you need to make it so that it will work for you. That was big.
Yeah, you don't have to put up with the gunk.
You don't. You don't have to. Exactly. What about you? Can I impose a question? What about your biggest leadership aha learning lesson from your life?
I would say, excuse me, I just had to cough a bit. I would say that it came from, I was young in my career. I was about 29 years old. I just started working for a division of the limited brands in the fashion industry. And it was the most corporate environment I'd ever worked in. And my direct manager was away in Southeast Asia, traveling, visiting factories. We were the sourcing arm of the company. And I was responsible, and I'd only been there for maybe like 4 months or something, for making sure certain orders were on track. And what a lot of people who've never worked in fashion either think it's really frivolous or really glamorous. And it's not frivolous, nor is it glamorous. It is a business, and millions of dollars are at stake when you're talking about t-shirts or brassieres or whatever the item is. And when I was going through the numbers, I must have stayed in the office until like 10:30 at night. They weren't adding up. And it looked like a major, not only a major loss, but things were going to be late in terms of shipment, which was a big problem. And the next morning I got into work really early. I tried to review things again, and it just wasn't adding up correctly. So I then, because my direct boss was away, I had to go into definitely 3 levels above me and probably 2 levels above her, the EVP, who was the only person around to talk to. And I was trembling. I thought, I've got to just do mea culpa, my mistake, and also try to come prepared with a possible solution. But I thought, I'm going to get fired. I messed this up. And I was probably teary-eyed. I'm sure my voice was trembling. And this was Jim Schwartz, who is now the president of Mast Industries. He could tell that I was not in a good space. And the first thing after he was looking at me, standing there babbling on, and he said, okay. He said, have a seat. So I sit down, and he goes, we all make mistakes. If you're not making a mistake, it means you're not working. And it was just this relief of him meeting me where I was, not treating it in this hyper punitive way. And he proceeded to reverse engineer the problem, work backwards. I should say, when my manager came back, it turned out, luckily it was not my fault. It was a critical piece of information she had forgotten to share with me before she left for the trip. So we were able to resolve everything. And it turned out that I was not the culprit. But I learned so much from Jim by the way he spoke to me, by the way he put it into context, by the way he humanized, to go back kind of full circle to our conversation, the way he humanized that moment. And I've never forgotten that. It was just such a gift of grace of how he said, it means if you're not making mistakes, you're not working, you're not trying. So
it's huge.
That was a big leadership moment and gift for me.
Thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely. So we only have a few minutes left in our conversation, and I think I want to end first before we get to the very end. I want to make sure you share, Laura, where can people learn more about your work and what you do?
Thank you. You go to my website, theleadershipspeakingschool.com, all one word, and you'll find all kinds of stuff in there. And I have a podcast too. It's called Leadership Speaking Radio. I am a super obsessed nerd about this topic, and all of my shows are about the incredible art and craft of leadership speaking. Behind the scenes, on the scenes, all the tools, get in there.
Awesome. And is there anything you're working on right now that's coming up that you want to make sure people know about?
Thank you. Yeah. I'm breaking out as a keynote speaker. And right now, behind the scenes, I'm working on a really fabulous website that's coming out. It's not going to be out for a while, but it will be called laurapenspeaker.com.
Awesome.
And that's where I want to speak this message of effective business communication for individual, team, and business growth to the world. So this is where you can find out more in about 4 weeks.
Wonderful. Congratulations. Awesome.
Yeah.
So we're going to end now. I guess my final question is there any final thought you want to share with anyone who tunes in about the connection of wonder, which is deep curiosity, audacity, blue sky thinking, awe, and pausing, and or rigor, which is deep focus and discipline and time on task, with your work?
Ooh, yes. Look, effective communication should have both, because it's the wonder of, what does it feel like? What is the possibility? What if I try this? To have that kind of courage and aspiration and curiosity about your communication and not be stuck in inertia, right? Those things, when you do them, when you free yourself into this experiential experience, then you have to work on it. The rigor. There is no free lunch. This is a skill. There is no quick fix solution. There's no silver bullet. So this is rolling up your shirt sleeves, doing the work, and saying yes to every opportunity you get to speak, because that's stage time and that's where you grow.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Laura, for joining us. Everyone, thank you very much for tuning in. If you want to learn more about Laura Penn, go to theleadershipspeakingschool.com. And thanks for joining us today. Bye.
Thank you so much. Such a privilege.
Welcome.